Good morning. My contribution is an abstract of a larger study about this papyrus that will be soon published. The Turin Indictment Papyrus is known since 1824, when it arrived to the museum with the papyri of Drovetti's collection. Bernardino Drovetti was the French consul in the country during the Napoleonic Empire and after the Restoration until 1829. He collected the majority of the papyri now in Turin. Jean-François Champollion, who had discovered the key to deciphering hieroglyphs in 1822, only 2 years later studied the Drovetti papyri collections during his stay in Turin. According to his own words, many of the 75 papyri of the group were reduced at tabac d'Espagne. The bulk of the papyri comes from the Theban region, and more precisely from the el-Medina. We do not possess any indication about the exact place of finding of these documents on the site. Drovetti's agent in Egypt, Jean-Jacques Riffaut, excavated some sites on the west bank of Thebes in about 1818. The negotiations for the selling of the finds lasted about 8 years and ended with the transportation of the objects to Turin. Among the Turin papyri, one can distinguish 3 types of hieratic documents: the funerary texts, including the chapters of the Book of the Dead, the Book of Amduat, and the Book for Coming Out to the Day, coming from private tombs and dating back to the age between the 21st dynasty and the Ptolemaic period. The literary texts, containing some examples of well-known texts and maybe deriving from one or more libraries in the el-Medina, they were probably used as didactic texts. Their chronology goes from the reign of Ramses II to that of Ramses IX. The account and administrative text, very numerous and relevant, or in unique specimens, such as the Royal Canon, the Turin Papyrus Map, the plan of Ramses IV's tomb, and the papyri forming the so-called Stato Civile. These texts mostly date to the 20th dynasty, like the Turin Indictment Papyrus. This papyrus was mentioned in the museum, written in 1888 by Fabretti, Rossi and Lanzone, in the following way. I translate. Fragment of a hieratic papyrus, glued on cardboard, composed of 2 fragmentary pages of text of the time of Ramses IV, and contains a list of various objects with many dates. Among these, the date of year 18, 3rd month of the 2nd season, Peret. The authors cite the first publication of the document, that by Blate and Rossi in 1869. They give a facsimile and the first attempt of translation. According to them, the text was a list of revenues for the palace of Ramses IV. As the position of the fragments was wrong, it was Sir Alan Gardiner, many years later, who achieved it, ordering the parts of the papyrus during his research visit to the museum in 1805 for the compilation of the Wörterbuch der ägyptischen Sprache. He could collect the text twice until 1947 and publish hieroglyphic transcription in his Ramesses administrative texts. The arrangement given by Gardiner is still the current position of the fragments. The papyrus is now kept in the storeroom of the museum. It is written on both faces of the story. It shows 2 pages on the recto and 3. It is quite well preserved, except for some gaps in the lower part and some other ones in the middle of the text. The recto is clearly a palimpsest, whose traces are visible, especially in the upper part of the first page. In the second verso, the scribe used the red ink to write the figures showing the sex of grains given as an offer to the god Khnum. The papyrus shows now a rather dark color and some large characters. The handwriting in the first page is definitely distinguished from that in the other 2 pages. It is more cursive and more difficult to decode. The paleographic and orthographic differences between the texts in the different sections led one to put the writing of the document down to 2 or more scribes. The lines of the text appear as being of different length. This difference can be explained by the need of the scribe to begin each line by the same expression sechaher, memorandum concerning. Some words or entire sentences are often interposed with the main lines of the text. like here, they are clearly later additions or changes made by the scribe. The papyrus is 41 centimeters high and 133 centimeters large. The height is nearly regular for the administrative and juridical papyri of the Ramesses period, as the measures are between 41 and 45 centimeters for this kind of text on papyrus. The literary texts, on the contrary, had usually a minor measure, that is 20-22 centimeters. Our papyrus is drawn up in the language of the Egyptian official texts of Ramesses period, the literary late Egyptian, or better, the late Egyptian used for the administration. It is a hybrid form of late Egyptian mixed with some words of Middle Egyptian, which gives rise to a language of a conventional aspect, typical of the legal and administrative context. The composition of the text is not previous than the year 4 of the reign of Ramses V, as the year 3 of this king is mentioned on the verso, line 2-8, is defined as Pharaoh, the living king. The document cites his predecessor, Ramses IV, on the verso, line 1-7, as the great god, a designation for the dead king. Whereas the official inscriptions in the temples and in the tombs give us a vision of the Egyptian priests as devoted servants, the non-literary papyri, like in our case, show the downside, that is, the priests as administrators and consumers of the goods of the temple. According to Gardiner, the papyrus Turin c. 1887 is, quotation, the most informative document we possess in regard to the internal administration of a Ramesses temple, end of quotation. It is a list of indictments against the Wab priest Penanukis of immense barbarity, sexual misdeeds, causing an abortion, intimidation, utmost brutality, theft of temple property, and disrespect for the sacred, as well as manipulation of the oracle. Another part of the document concerns the accusations to a boat captain called Khnum of embezzling more than 5,000 sacks of grain due to the temple of Khnum over a period of nearly 10 years. Then a small section reports the illicit activities of a group of criminals whose names are unknown. The first act of indictment against Penanukis is that he seized 5 calves sacred to Menevis, to sell them to some other priests, and a calf sacred to the same god, which he sold to some Magi officers. Penanukis is also indicted for carrying the statue of the god Khnum when he was in a state of impurity. He had not completed his rites of purification because he had not drunk the natron for the last 3 days of the ritual time. He is also accused of theft of a Ujat eye amulet, theft of an unidentified object from a basket, theft of a 60 long cloth from the temple of Khnum, heavy mutilation of a man, corruption of a priest, seduction of some married women, blinding of 2 other women. The act of corruption consisted in trying to promote 3 people to the rank of a priest to the detriment of another man by the manipulation of the divine oracle. These crimes were reported to the attention of the pharaoh himself, who sent the overseer of the treasury Chaim-Tir to investigate them, especially the theft of the goods from Khnum's treasury. 30 of 60 long cloths were recovered, but the texts say nothing about the punishment inflicted to Penanukis. Another section refers to the crimes committed by the boat captain Khnum to the detriment of the temple of Khnum. These are some great theft of cereals perpetrated with the complicity of the staff of the temple. Khnum began his career in the year 28 of Ramses IV, and it proceeds from the document that in the year 1 of Ramses V, he had started stealing some huge quantities of cereals during their transport by boat from the estates of the temple in the delta towards the south. He was also suspected of having set fire to a boat belonging to the temple, and charged of corrupting the supervisors of the temple to avoid this accusation. As one can see from the list of the mentioned crimes, there was no distinction between civil and criminal justice, between crimes against the state or against the administration of the temples, which can be considered as a part of the general administration, and crimes against the persons. In every case, in these documents, we do not have a record of a trial, as it happens, for example, in the text relating to the Harem conspiracy, but rather a list or a memorandum of the accusations. In the text of our papyrus, passage, memorandum concerning the appointment of the Wab priest Bachenhons as a priest of Khnum by the vizier Neferompet. This Wab priest, Tenanukis, said to the Wab priest Nebunenef, if only we had 3 other Wab priests, so that we might induce the god throughout the son of this merchant. He was examined, and it was found that he had said it indeed. He was made to take an oath by the Lord, life, prosperity, and health, not to enter the temple. But he gave thanks to this prophet, saying, Let me enter with the god. This prophet accepted these things, and let him enter with the god. It undoubtedly shows that the charge of a priest was quite coveted, because this position entailed distinguished privileges, like the access to the interior of the temple and the participation to the divine offerings. In some cases, the Wab priest seems to participate to the quality of the god he serves. As for the role of the both captain and comnacht, each large temple in Thebes, like in every region of Egypt, possessed some boats to transport products such as grains, cattle, wine, oil, fruits. Every unit was organized and directed by a captain of the boat, Eri Usechet of the temple. For the geographical and religious context, the ancient town, ancient Egyptian Yabu, Greek Elephantine, has given a lot of archaeological remains since the pre-dynastic age to the Greco-Roman epoch. This fact makes the site one of the most relevant for the study of urban development in Egypt. The town rises up on an island of granite, and it forms a natural border to the south of Egypt. Indeed, during its history, Elephantine has been a border town, where some activities related to this function developed. Already since the Old Kingdom, it had a strategic role for the Egyptian state. It functioned as a base for the expeditions to southern Nubia and as a commercial center. This importance looks evident from many public buildings and houses, which date back between the 5th and the 6th dynasties. During the New Kingdom, the officials who took part to the commercial expeditions or the military campaigns towards the south had to pass through Aswan or Elephantine. Their passage is proved by the hundreds of graffiti they left there. Some different temples rose in the town, dedicated to local gods and making up its real core. The first of these deities seems to be Satis, whose temple was in origin formed by a cave, enlarged in the course of the centuries until its latest development in the Ptolemaic period, here in a restoration made by the German expedition. In the Middle Kingdom, a masculine deity, Khnum, joined to Satis. His temples are still now the most impressive, especially those dating back to the Greco-Roman period. From the temple in the Middle Kingdom come only some limestone remains dating to Sebekotep III. The temple was rebuilt at a larger scale under the reign of Thutmose III, and then under Ramses II, but the floor, the bases of the columns, and the doors, now in situ, are the work of Nectanebo II during the 30th dynasty. At its peak, the temple of Khnum measured 123 meters of length, and its court counted many statues, stelae, and offering tables. The divine triad in Elephantine was completed by Enukis, daughter of Khnum and Satis, associated to the Sahel Highland. Khnum and his priests are the main characters in the text of the Turin Indictment Papyrus, but Enukis is also mentioned there. Her temple underwent the theft of different objects. I will cite in the following some passages of the papyrus where one can find the mention of the theft and the acts of the respect. For example, on the recto, memorandum concerning the black cow that is in his of Tenanukis' possession, after she had given birth to 5 calves of Meneris. He seized them and took them to the south, where he sold them to the Wab priests. Disrespect for the sacred. At line 5, memorandum concerning his committing adultery with the citizeness Mutnemet, daughter of Pasecheti, while she was married with the fisher Jehutimhab, son of Pentaur. Sexual misdeed. Memorandum concerning the handing over to the temple of a chest with 2 documents in it by the prophet Bachem consul. He opened it and he laid it before Khnum, and he assented to it. Maybe manipulation of the oracle. Also the passage I mentioned before in the slide 9 shows another example of a manipulation of the oracle in the sentence. Let me enter with the god. This prophet accepted his things, and let him enter with the god, where the word things he hath indicates a bribe given to the prophet. Also on the recto we have memorandum concerning the cutting off of the ear of Sachem-Nefer, son of Bakserit, by this Wab priest, without the knowledge of the pharaoh, life, prosperity, and health. This is a crime of utmost brutality. On the verso, the question of the cereals and grains. Total grain for the house of Khnum, Lord Elephantine, in respect to which this both captain combined with the scribes, the inspectors, and the cultivators of the house of Khnum, they embezzling it and disposing of it for their own use, 5,004 sacks. And again, memorandum concerning the burning of a boat of the house of Khnum, together with its masts and its equipment, by the boat captain of the house of Khnum. He gave his things to the inspectors of the house of Khnum, and they did not send any report concerning it. There is nothing until today. So we have example of disrespect for the sacred and of corruption. From the lexical point of view, the text of the Turin Indictment Papyrus shows the repetition of the term seka her at the beginning of each line of the manuscript. On the contrary, in the heading of the document, the word occurs in the plural, and we translated it as papers documents. In this first occurrence, it seems to be a presentation of the facts, which are listed later. In the rest of the text, Secha has more the meaning of a memorandum, that is, note or record for future use or informal business communication. The expression pa shuti on the recto gives some lexicographical problems. We translated it as this merchant, and it is, according to us, the mention of a social rank, not a proper name, as some authors suggest. This would be perfectly coherent with the rest of the text, which takes into society, such as wab priest, magi police, agents, citizens, fishermen, scribe of the treasury performing as mayor of Elephantine, prophet, vizier, overseer of the treasury, followers, God's father, etc. We are dealing here with a vivid portrait of the society living around the domain of Khnum in Elephantine at the age of Ramses IV and V. They are people involved in different manners in the affair, both as victims of an abuse, or as authors of a crime, or as driving force of the action. The majority of the people holding titles are employed in the administration of the temple, but some also have roles in the civil administration, such as Magi, Seshper Edge, Atia, Chati, etc. In our text, there is no mention of the punishment given to the culprits who committed the crimes. However, many registers in the language used are linked in the dimension to the dimension of the penalty, like one can see at the line 1-4 of the recto. Memorandum concerning his going to the city, Thebes, and receiving there certain documents for him, whom Ra did not allow to be inspected forever. He brought them to the south in order to lay them before Khnum, but the god did not approve them. Here we have a punishment expressed as a retrospective formula of destitution, similar to that one used in 2 texts of the Harem conspiracy dossier. For example, the great enemy deprived of his name, the cup-bearer, whom Ra did not allow to act as a scribe in the house of life, humble and weak forever. According to Vernius, this was une application destinée à effacer rétrospectivement un fait contraire à l'ordre du monde, en le niant et en attribuant sa négation au Dieu, juge des hommes. This formula should have a legal effect too, to prevent the heirs of the criminal to exploit the advantages deriving from the office from which his father had been removed. In this passage, the scribe does not specify the name of the culprit, Penanukis, neither the reason of this punishment. The penalty is inflicted by the god Ra, so the text moves from a narrative tone to another, more elevated level, implying the divine intervention in the human affairs. The last sentence in the line shows the submission of some papers to the god Khnum to get his approval, that is, consultation of the divine oracle. The vocabulary conveying the meaning of religion and its rules comes back in the line 19, where there is an allusion to the necessary purification rites to enter the most inner part of the fortress of Bigga, rule which the criminal Kenanukis violates. Later on, he was examined, and it was found that he had said it indeed. He was made to take an oath by the Lord, life, prosperity, and health, not to enter the temple. But he gave these things to this prophet, saying, "Let me enter with the God." This prophet accepted these things, and let him enter with the God. Here we can find the oath Ankh and Neb by the Wab priest not to enter the temple, but he breaks it in exchange for a bribe. The word Ankh is often used for the term oath, whereas the word Arep can be translated with the verb to swear, especially in the negative oath, or to mean to refuse or to deny by oath. In some other texts, similar to the Turin Indictment Papyrus, such as the well-known Papyrus Sult 124, one can find the same oath of the Lord, one of the commonest law instruments in the Ramesses texts. The expression Ankh and Neb refers here to a royal oath, as the Lord is the ruling pharaoh. Later in the text of the Turin Papyrus, the language touches the semantic register of the violence, like on the recto, where there is the occurrence of an episode of cutting off the ear by a citizen. This punishment seems to be an exclusive right of the king. At the line 210 of the recto, the scribe describes the violences against the servant of the royal line Mutneferet and against her daughter Baksetit, set fire to their house and blind them. The register of violence comes back on the verso, where the text says that Khnumnacht burnt a boat of the temple, together with its equipment. The inspectors of the temple, whom Khnumnacht had conveniently bribed, do not report to the vizier about these events. From our text, it seems difficult even to establish which type of court should have judged the crimes committed by Penanukis and Khnumnacht. It seems that the same type of courts debated so much the crimes against religion as those against the administration. In the text of the Papyrus Meyer A, for example, one can deduce that the priests were judged by the same type of court which judged the common criminals. The court could deal as much with the cases of civil crimes as with the cases of penal crimes, but the punishments inflicted by the judges were very different. This let make suppose that a formal awareness of the distinction between a crime against a private part and a crime concerning the whole community was rising. In our papyrus, in fact, the disrespect of the Wab priest Penanukis for the rites of purification is a violation against the community. As such, it implies the disturbance of the mat, or the established order. The fulfillment of the justice, according to the Egyptian texts, means to restore the order and to make all the parts of a trial satisfied through the resolution of this conflict. In the well-known text of the vizier Rekhmire, inscribed in his Theban tomb, the action of justice has to conform to this idea. I have exalted Mat to the height of the sky. I made his beauty circulate in all the width of the heart, so that she can rest in the nostrils of the man. Nobody will say about me, "What did you do then?" I have judged great causes, and I have made the two parts in the dispute go out satisfied. I have not slanted justice in exchange for a reward. I have not been indifferent to the man with empty hands. I have never accepted a bribe from anyone. For the Egyptians, the crime had a moral aspect strictly linked to mythology. Through his actions, the wrongdoer showed himself as a display of Set or Apophis, the embodiment of the chaos itself. The criminal was then placed at the same level of the animals sacrificed in the temple or during the funerary rites to symbolize the defeat of the evil forces. His punishment became no more a form of revenge, but a system of protection of the society against the cosmic chaos which he represents in a small scale. The identity of the transgressor and the treatment he deserved were often determined by some religious aspects. At the same time, the punishment of the crimes played a relevant role in the maintenance of the social order. The Egyptians had thought up a way to extend the punishment in the afterlife through the destruction of the name of the culprit and the retrospective removal from his office, as we have just seen. In conclusion, one cannot grasp the real nature of the text in the papyrus. It seems an abstract of the illegal actions committed by two identified persons, Penanukis and Khnum. Moreover, on the verso we have a list of the crimes which some unnamed men perpetrated against the temples of Khnum and Anukis. The account goes on with the misdeeds of Khnum, so one can suppose that the unnamed men mentioned before acted on his orders or were his accomplices. This document was probably part of the archives of the Temple of Khnum, later moved to Thebes or Deir el-Medina, maybe for security reasons. But we are, by this statement, in the field of the hypothesis and not in that of a detailed and precise study of the text. Thank you very much for your attention.